the early to like to mid 60s. Like, was it a lot of hanging around Soho?
What, in normal life or on the show? I mean,
Well,
I'd never hung around. Actually, I did. I used some good bars, good restaurants and good bars.
I spent half my life.
Yeah, I used to live.
But I spent the whole sort of before Doctor Who.
Oh, the 60s was really interesting in its way. I mean, my first job in London, I was in the chorus at the London Palladium because I'd been a singer. I trained as a singer when I was a kid. Until I was about 13, I used to still have singing lessons. I was sort of lead singer in the school choir and all that stuff. And it was something I never really followed up on. When my voice broke, it was a good voice, so it was okay. And I auditioned for the job in London. I ended up with a job as being top tenor in the chorus at the Palladium, which was quite good seeing. I didn't read music. Everybody else in the group, they were called the Derek Taverner Singers. I think it was just a name invented for a particular show. And there was a show at the Palladium that was supposed to run a year. It was called Man in the Moon, and it starred the dreadful Charlie Drake. And he was the only name really in the show.
What's wrong with Charlie Drake?
What's wrong with Charlie Drake? Don't take me there. No, I mean he wasn't. I didn't like him anyway. Neither did anyone else. He was quite funny in his way as a comedian, but he wasn't a very pleasant person. So we'll leave it like that.
Okay.
And he was so selfish in the show. I mean, when you think of people like Bill Hartnell, who was the most generous actor to work with, he seriously was. Charlie Drake was just the antithesis of that. There were four not particularly well-known people. Actually, one or two of them were reasonably well-known. Canadian actor called Reid Deruin. I was thinking if even David Graham was one of them as well. And they played four sort of senior people in this, in the science side of the thing, sending this rocket to the moon. It was called Man in the Moon, this awful show. In those days, and we're talking about 1960, Christmas 63, it cost £75,000 to put the show on. That was a huge amount of money, absolutely massive. It was the equivalent of about 3-4 million now to put the show on. It was supposed to run a year, it ran 3 months. By the end of it, being in the chorus, we could actually see out into the auditorium of the Palladium quite well. It's an enormous theatre, seats about 2,800 people, fabulous theatre, it's the best, it's absolutely fantastic. We can count the audience. And I can remember one evening performance counting 127 people in there. It was absolutely frightful. Anyway, it came off after 3 months. But yeah, so I was a singer, and that was my first job. But it was also my last official singing job. I never really I had auditioned for My Fair Lady when it opened. I didn't get the part, but I didn't do a particularly good audition. I can remember my voice cracking halfway through my audition song. Which is something you absolutely dread, but I didn't warm up properly for the audition. It was my own fault. I'm not saying I would have got the job if that hadn't happened, but I didn't get the job. And that was the last one. I never auditioned for another musical.
So the Gunfighters?
Sorry?
So the Gunfighters?
I didn't have to audition for it. Do you think I got the part? The point was, actually the song was, I have mixed feelings about that song. I know people deride it. I think the reason they do, and I don't know if you'd agree with me, is because it was used as the theme linking song between every scene. So when you watch 4 episodes in a row, it gets very tedious. And I certainly found it very tedious that way. But I think if you just see one episode, and then a week later you see another, it's not that intrusive, not so wrong. All films, all westerns, always had a linking theme that went. So, I mean, there was nothing really unusual. I suppose it was the fact that it was the song and the same line kept on coming out. It was sung well, it was recorded well, everything else. My own particular part in singing, I found difficult because it wasn't really in my key. It was a hard one for me to sing and enjoy singing. I could sing it, but it was just a hard one to do. But although I found it perhaps a little embarrassing at the time, having seen it later, I think it's a damn good serial. It's a hell of a good story. It fits the Doctor Who idea perfectly, being able to drop into the story without interfering in that. It's a legend anyway, but that doesn't matter. But it fitted Doctor Who perfectly. And the performances, apart from the accents, which were probably abysmal, would be an understatement. I mean, they were dreadful. Shane Rimmer was okay, but he was Canadian. He had a chance. Everybody else, where were they coming from? My God, if you thought Morton Dill was bad, boy, were they bad.
I wasn't going to say
Morton Dill wasn't all that inaccurate, to be fair. But apart from the accents, the filmic quality of that was just tremendous. I haven't actually got the pictures with me, but I have got some pictures of the studio setup at Riverside Studios in London for that show. Tiny space, low ceiling, it wasn't a very high ceilinged studio. How the hell Rex Tucker managed to get looking like a proper Western film, I thought it was stunning. And in fact, all it was the facades of a street on both sides, and the front of some going around the corner, and a backcloth. Covered an area, I wouldn't say it was much bigger than this room. That was it.
Yeah.
And somehow, it works absolutely, I think it works brilliantly. No one's saying anything or nodding in agreement. Do you disagree with me or do you agree with me?
Brilliant.
Yeah,
It gets a lot of love, and it gets watched.
and it's getting more. I'm seeing more and more stuff on things like Twitter these days. Say, yeah, actually, this is much to ride in. Why? It's a great. It really was. And of course, it was great fun to do.
Are you aware of Twitch when they re-showed everything?
No.
On the internet, they sort of, you guys are, aren't you? And it was weird because a lot of them were new fans, and a lot of them were American as well. So the comments that came down the side were fantastic, but everyone was loving it. Obviously, the accents. But
The accents are appalling,
really
but
stood the test of time.
I think it does, and I mean, and the whole thing is Stephen dressing up like Roy Rogers. I mean, it's just it's so ridiculous it isn't true because the other guys look pretty authentic.
Yeah,
they look the Atlantic guy, and they just look tremendous. And who played Wyatt Earp? Lovely guy, wonderful. John Alderson. He used to do a series in the States. He made a wonderful film series in called not Blazing Saddles, Boots. Was it Boots and Saddles? It was a thing about the old military, the cavalry. What do they call it? The Western Army.
The Union.
Custer's lot. Yeah, but I wasn't Custer, but I mean.
The US Cavalry.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the name of the series was, but he did that for however long the series ran. He was the sergeant in that. And so his accent was absolutely authentic. The fact was he came from Yorkshire, but he made a good career for himself in the States, and he was a lovely guy too.
I was going to say in that same show, Anthony Jacobs is actually the father of a friend of mine.
Yes.
Who played Doc Holliday.
Yeah,
So
that was a good. I mean, there were some great performances, and that time between Doc Holliday and the Doctor, just brilliant. That was so clever. I thought it was. The more I think about it, the better I think it was. And every time I've taken a look at any bit of it, I don't do that often. Probably about once every 5 years. But when I do just catch some of it, I'm really quite impressed with certainly how it looks, and I think even some of my gags worked.
Yeah.
Just a triple miss.
I don't think you were in the room before when Pip's video was on and you were checking out your hair in the monitor.
As if I'd do such a thing. The vanity of the man.
I wish we could just flip that on now, but it's...
No, actually, I was sitting at the back. I didn't see all of it because I was out there just catching the end of the football. But when I did come and see, I was amazed at how much of all that period, of which a huge amount was shown that didn't involve me. I appeared very, very rarely in those bits, so I was extremely disappointed with that. Whoever could have
Well, it is. I mean, it's a contentious issue how much the BBC wiped. Not just.
Well, no, they wiped everything. The problem wasn't the BBC wiping tapes that was the problem. The first problem is we shot everything on 2-inch tape, which was very expensive. It was very hard to store because the tapes were so big. The cassettes for them were about 15 by 15 by 4 inches. So I mean, they were big cassettes. So you can imagine the storage space that was needed for everything that had been recorded on television. It was a new thing, this recording, until 1960, 1959. Every drama was live, or it was filmed, but they were live, and there was no storage to be done. They were recorded on telecine, in fact. So when they started recording on this big tape, storage became a problem. Also, the expense of the tapes became a problem. So they had to do something about it. What did they do? They wiped every tape, transferring it onto telecine. Telecine was what they sold. They sold cans of film to wherever it was, so they were reproduced. But the stupid, idiotic, ludicrous fools at the BBC did not archive the films. So they didn't keep anything. They sold them on, and if they hadn't got any more copies of it, that was the end of it. So that's why they're lost. A lot of them were never returned, a lot of them will have been scrapped wherever they ended up, and those that have been found have not necessarily been kept in the best condition. I did hear about 3 years ago that Philip Morris claimed that he'd found, well, this is hearsay because Philip has not said it to me, but he kept on inferring for a long time that something had been found. I understand that it was the whole series of the Mythmakers, 4 cans. But they were in such bad condition, you couldn't do anything with them. They were absolutely irretrievable. And that's as near as we've got to finding a decent full-length serial. I mean, if they could find the Massacre, the Mythmakers and the Savages, I'd die very happily tomorrow. That would be, that's my ultimate desire. It won't happen. I'm not too fussed about the Dalek Master Plan. I thought it was fair enough. There was some nonsense. The one episode I wish they could find, which there is not a chance of them ever finding, would be the Feast of Stephen. Because whilst I've heard it on audio, do you know I haven't a single real reflection or memory of having made that. Doesn't ring a bell in any area. And I'm amazed at that, because I love silent comedy, and we're doing Keystone Cops and all sorts of stuff in there. I guess it was probably quite good, or maybe it was so bloody awful, that's why it was never handed on anyway. And of course Bill at the end turned to camera and said that we'd like to wish our viewers a happy Christmas. Sorry Bill, what's that? You've broken the 3rd wall, or the 4th wall, which one doesn't do. But it wouldn't worry me if they never found the Dalek Master Plan, particularly. And it won't distress me greatly if they never find any of the others, but it would be nice if they could. The Massacre is a gem. I know it is. I've listened to the audio a couple of times. Only a couple of times, but I have listened to it a couple of times. Yeah. And it is a smashing piece, and it was great for Stephen. It was the best part I played, I think.
I think something that always surprises new fans is how, it doesn't surprise us, but how good the scripts are, the performances, everything is just solid, and how modern who didn't invent.
Well, I think
didn't invent the trickiness and the moral ambiguity.
I think the series originally was not necessarily character-led; it was script-led, and the scripts were all. I always thought they were great. Mine, a couple of script editors, story editors, I know, Donald Tosh in particular, thinks that's probably 180% wrong. So I couldn't be coming at it more diametrically wrong. One or two directors thought the scripts were awful. Richard Martin thought The Chase was the worst piece of stuff he'd ever seen written. Yet he directed the whole series. I think he did it rather well. He thinks it's the worst piece of work he ever did. I think he probably thinks casting me as Morton Dill was the worst thing he ever did. Actually, he didn't, because that got me the job with Steve.
I was going to say, how fast things moved in those days is you're in one serial with Morton Dill, and then by the end of it, you're Stephen Tyler with a beard.
Yeah, 3 weeks. That was a 3-week growth.
Yeah.
And just about got away with it. Nobody ever commented on the fact that it's the same actor.
No.
It wasn't noticed, which is exactly what we wanted. We didn't want anyone to think, oh, wasn't he playing Morton Dill earlier? Yeah. I don't think anyone noticed at the time.
No, I mean, because
the performances were slightly different.
Totally. That's a different accent. But
Can you imagine Morton Dill having been the character that they took on the ship? That would have been...
I would have made the gunfight so different.
Well, I was reverting to Morton Dill, I think, when we did the gunfight.
Yeah. But I was going to say, because as legend, i.e. Wikipedia would have it, William Hartnell sort of was one of the people that sort of picked you out to be...
Well, I discovered this sometime later, actually. At the time, I thought that Verity Lambert took a liking to me in the producer's run-through, and at the end of the recording the following day, they knew that Russ and Jackie were leaving and they hadn't got a replacement. It might have been a last-ditch panic move on Verity's part, I don't know. But they offered me the role immediately afterwards. Went over to the pub, got a pint, nearly dropped it when they said, well, would you like to join the show permanently as a character? And Dennis Spooner said, I've got this character written, and it's all done. I had no idea that Jackie and Russ were leaving. The one thing that I discovered later from Maureen O'Brien was that Bill was getting more and more tetchy and concerned that Russ and Jackie were leaving. They knew, everyone knew within the show, knew that Russ and Jackie were leaving at the end of that serial, and they'd known for some time. I don't know whether they'd auditioned people. I don't know anything about the background. I wasn't really concerned. I knew nothing about it. During the rehearsals of the Morton Dill sequence, I mean, I was there for the whole week, joined on the Monday with the rest of the cast. Friday we did the recording. And the first rehearsal was great. I was a bit in awe of all these people going into that studio to play a sort of 8-minute segment, which was a substantial bit of that particular episode on the Empire State Building. And I was in awe of Bill Hartnell. He was a big star. I was certainly in awe of Russ because I knew his work well, and Jackie from the show. I didn't know about Jackie prior to that, but I did know from the show. And Maureen O'Brien. These were established big television actors, and I was very impressed and pleased to be in their company. I got on exceptionally well with them. We enjoyed each other's company, we chatted. Bill Hartnell, to a certain extent, took me under his wing because we had a scene to play together. So he worked with me, and he was a very professional, very good actor. And it was just nice. What I didn't know was that Maureen went to Bill on the Tuesday, and we'd only been rehearsing for 2 days, but after 2 days rehearsal, she went to Bill and she said, look, Bill, I know you're worried about the takeover, and what about this for you? And she said, which is what she told me, she said, Bill reacted like a big weight was taken off his shoulder. And she'd said to him, well, you like this boy, well, he's okay. And she said it was literally like a weight came off his shoulder, and he just rehearsed the following day. In the meantime, Bill had contacted Verity and said, when you come in for the producer's run tomorrow, look at this boy. And she did, obviously, paid attention. And then we went into the studio the following day, on the Friday. We did the recording in the evening. And after that, and my performance, they invited me to play Stephen. Now, how they could see Stephen Taylor from the performance I gave as Morton Dill, I don't know. They're very small people. But they saw there was something about me as a person that they liked, that they knew they could work with that. And obviously I could act because Morton Dill was nothing like me. And that's how I got the part. But it was very nice. I mean, I've always had a deep affection for Bill Hartnell because essentially he was responsible for my career, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, there you are, in the stocks, or in the...
I was in my jail, meeting them for the first time. There's a very funny shot, I don't know if you've got it on there, where it looks like I'm singing to them. Have you ever seen that one? There's Russ, Jackie and Maureen, and I'm in full singing mode. I mean, I don't know what I was doing. That's how it was partly a shot from rehearsals, from the camera rehearsals. So it wasn't a pretend moment. We weren't setting anything up. I've no idea what it was. I'll have to listen to it again and see what I was saying at the time.
We've just got a clip here of Stephen's sort of first time in the TARDIS.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you've seen.
I might have seen it once.
Yeah.
but only once, probably. Is this the start of the time medal, or is it the end of the chase?
Doctor? He says the TARDIS isn't a time machine.
Oh, does he now?
Tell him.
I don't see why I should, my child. You learn soon enough.
Look, Doctor, I've seen some spaceships in my time. Admittedly, nothing like this. But what does this do?
And that is the dematerializing control, and that over yonder is the horizontal hold. Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is the chair with a paddle on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy. Now please stop bothering me.
It's a good line, I like that.
It's actually, this is why we do this, isn't it? Because that anecdote you just told about you being down the pub with everybody after, you can sort of see the chemistry. Like William Hartnell with his weightlifter on his shoulders, is actually, that's a really bubbly William Hartnell.
Yes, yeah, I mean, I'm not certain that, I mean, he could play anything from like that cheerful character as the Doctor, or the miserable old codger that he could be sometimes. I mean, I think he was very versatile as the Doctor. I think he was, for me, he is the Doctor still. There have been many very good actors who've been the Doctor since, and I wouldn't gainsay or describe any of them as not being good. But Bill, for me, was definitive. And I think, seriously, without his performance and the quality of performance he gave, none of this and everything that's been happening over the past 20 years would have happened.
Oh, if they'd got it wrong, it would have just died after 3 seasons.
Well, I mean, the BBC wanted to lose it, but unfortunately along came the Daleks, the audience went berserk and they were stuck with it. So, yeah.
It wasn't just the Daleks.
It wasn't, but it was. They were the ones, that's where the audience went through the roof, and that's when, you know, there was no turning back after that.
So what was it like, when I asked this to Annika before, but what was it like suddenly being in a show that was big at the time? Not big like it's big now, but it was still UK, it was a big deal, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I mean, it was. You were in a major television show. I know it was a children's programme, officially. It was on at children's time, and it was on a Saturday night, and you'd think that isn't going to pull a great audience at that time. It was early-ish, I think. I never saw the majority of my episodes, because there was always something I was doing. I might have been opening a phase or something like that, but that was the spin-off from doing the show. So I rarely saw our work, and we just treated it as a weekly rep job. You know, I'd been in weekly rep in the theatre, where we did a different play every week. I did 2 years in weekly rep, and we did 96 plays in that time, which is a huge amount of learning and forgetting and struggling and stage fright and God knows what. But doing Doctor Who was a 25-minute live performance, although there was no audience and it wasn't actually live. It was going to be transmitted at a later time. But we didn't edit. The budget for those shows, which were great to be in, I mean, it was a proper, serious acting job. We worked very hard and we had to get it right. There was no way you could do anything else. We had to get it right. The cameras had to get it right. The sound guys had to get it right. The director had to get it right. The vision mixer didn't get fluffy fingers. I mean, there were so many things that could have gone wrong, which did not. It's amazing the shows looked as good as they did. It was on a weekly basis, Monday to Thursday rehearsal, Friday in the studio, camera rehearsal, evening recording, done, go home. That's it. And if we overran, the length of the recording was 3 times the length of the programme. That's all. We could not go over that. If we did, the lights went out. So we didn't go over it. You had to get it in the time. It was serious professional work, and the directors at that time, I don't know if Annika talked about this, but the difference between what they do today, which technically is brilliant, scripts we talked about to a certain extent, and I think they are where one lets it down to a large extent. But technically it is brilliant. The things that they can do and make on screen happen are just what the audience wants to see. We couldn't do any of that. The budget for each episode that I was in allowed for 3 edits. That's all. So we're doing it live, or as live. The TARDIS appears in one sequence. That's 2 edits. Because you've got the scene before the TARDIS is there, you've got the scene when the TARDIS is there, and the meld between the two. So you've only got room for 1 more edit. The one thing we could not do was do editing to mend mistakes that the actors made. So we didn't make mistakes, we got out of it. Often we'd be standing around hoping that Bill would get back on the script. And occasionally Billy made his famous fluffs. But, you know, it was live, it was pressured, it was everything else, and he did make mistakes, and he was losing the faculty a little bit at that time. He was losing the facility to do things. So he made mistakes. They're all on the original recordings. And if you listen to, has anyone not listened to those original sound recordings? Oh, that's good. I'm glad you all have. No, that's pleasing. Because they are very, very good. And everything has been left in that actually happened on transmission. You can hear cables sliding across the floor. You can hear things bumping off, you know, a camera will just hit something that it shouldn't go, just get a little. You can hear these sounds. And on top of all that, you can hear Billy occasionally making mistakes. No, I'm not a dog. Oh, God. Bless his heart. So yeah, in answer to your question, Ian, it was you were aware you were in something, if not very special, something that was trying very hard to be very good. And to a large extent, I think it was very good. And it continued in that vein for quite a while. To be honest, I lost interest in Doctor Who once John Pertwee was there. Now, don't get me wrong, I loved John, he was a good friend. But I didn't like his Doctor particularly. I thought, no, it doesn't do it for me. And I hated the fact that it got bogged into the whole unit thing, which I absolutely detested. And it was locked into the UK and all this silly military stuff. I used to get very angry and annoyed. So I stopped watching it. I tried and have tried ever since, and succeeded, to watch at least 1 episode of every Doctor. So at least I know who they were and what they did and the kind of Doctor they did. And I probably saw more than 1 episode in each case. But that was a deliberate attempt to make sure I stayed in touch with it. But I'm not really a great fan of the programme. I don't watch it still now. I've seen one with Jodie and I thought she was great. The series seems to have been about 50-50 split between being hated and liked. I don't know what view you lot have on that or whether that's right. But I found all the Doctors interesting in their own way and good. But for me, Bill was the Doctor, and to be in that show at that time was something special. You did actually feel, well, you stood up tall when you walked into the television centre because you were in something, you know? And it was great. Actors have obviously we've got an ego, we must have. You couldn't do what we do if we were somewhat egotistical, because